Hey everybody, Scoutcrafter here again. It's Mishmash Monday, and that means we got a few things to get to. First off, I know we have a lot of new subscribers, and there was a couple things that I've been asked a lot about recently, and I just wanted to go over. The first one was about the wire brushes and things like that, and also want to talk about the fiber wheel for a minute.
Now, some people are asking me why I use different wire brushes or wire wheels when I do my restorations. A lot of times, like this one here, I buy a lot of these from Harbor Freight because their prices are good and they seem to hold up. They don't spit out the metal. You know, for import wire wheel, they hold up really good. Now, there's this Warrior one. It's a 5-inch wheel, but you can see here it's got a red ring around it. This is more of a stiff wire brush, okay? It's not as stiff as these wire brushes. These are obviously real stiff, and this is something you save for anvils or something that's really heavy duty and there's a lot of hard rust and scale. That's when you use these. But for most stuff, we use these. Now, the stiff one I use for getting off the initial rust and scale and things like that. But then this is the one I tend to go to a lot. Now, if you notice here, this one here, it says it's a brass wire wheel. And again, from Harbor Freight, you see brass wire wheel. But when we hold a magnet to the wires, you can see brass is not magnetic. So this is obviously not brass. It's brass plated. However, it is still very soft. You can see here, it's soft enough, and you can rub your hand. And this is really good for getting in the intricate cracks and crevices of most tools. So I really like this one. But they will come a lot of times, like this one here will come. It'll say coarse. So you can get a couple different wire wheels. It really helps in your restoration. It was an old wire wheel I had for Vermont American. It was a coarse wire wheel. But it's made in Spain, so you have to, go by the quality. Now, this one here, they are consumable items, which means that after a while, the wires will start coming out and it will start to look sparse and get thin. And when the wires start to spit out, it's usually a sign that the wheel needs replacement, So this one here was obviously, there's still life in it if you want to, but it's, then you got to start wearing face shields and things like that, So that's when it's time to get rid of them, put a new one on. And that's, they're not expensive, but they really do a good job. So it pays to replace them. Years ago, this was a very popular item for mounting wire wheels or buffing wheels. And what it was an arbor. And here you could see you would take your 2 wire wheels, or you could put 2 buffing wheels on here, and this pulley would run a V-belt into a pulley that went on a regular motor. And you could see here it's a cast aluminum or maybe magnesium, but it's a cast product, and you would bolt this onto a board, and at the other end of the board the motor would be, and it would spin this pulley, and that would spin your wheels. Now, these had bushings compared to, I like bearings, but these are bushings in here, most likely bronze, and they had little oil caps here, and you would, oil them up, and they do work good when they get worn in and stuff, but you just keep them oiled, and but you don't see these too much, that you don't see them anymore, but they were big in the 50s and 60s.
Now, about a year ago, my good friend Joe from Joe's Shop started talking about the fiber wheel. He introduced us all to this fiber wheel that he bought, and he swore by it. And little by little, it kind of won me over. Everybody tried. I was kind of last on board, just like Evaporust. I'm kind of the last guy for that stuff. But I tried out about a month and a half ago. I tried out the fiber wheel, and I got to tell you, it's a game changer. You got to get one of these. Let me show you.
Now, like I said, Joe was the first one to actually try this thing out, and this one here, you get them on Amazon. I'll put the link in the description, and it comes in different grits. I take it this is the grit here, 180. This is a 1-inch wide. Now, they also sell a 2-inch wide. I wouldn't recommend the 2-inch first because, it's a lot of times a thinner wheel is easier to work with. But it's a fibrous wheel, and it works really good. Let me show you how. Now, to mount it onto your motor, you just get an arbor adapter, which they sell. You have to be a little tricky because these things tend to want to compress in the middle. So it helps if you have a larger washer than the ones that you usually get, because they do want to kind of squeeze in. But when you first put it on, it seems like it runs a little bit out of balance, but as soon as you start using it, it wears down and it'll find its kind of, you know, balance more or less. You can see here, I used this side more than the inside, and you can see it's wearing accordingly.
Now, the wire wheel and the fiber wheel gives you two different kind of finishes and whatnot, but I suggest you have to have kind of one of each, you know. They're cheap enough. You already have the motor to drive it, so you're better off getting, you know, at least one of each to try them out. I'm going to show you something also about what today's project's going to be. I'm in the mood to do a crowbar.
Now, I don't know why I just, you know, you got to do a restoration according to the mood you're in. And I've been wanting to do this for a couple, I don't know, I've been looking at this. I have a bunch of crowbars. I must have 20, but this was my grandfather's. And you can see, I guess as a kid, I kind of beat it down a little bit and, you know, wore over the edge here. But this is a good one. It's made in the USA, and it's, yeah, you can see it's stamped there. But to do this, you know, when you have something like this, the first thing you're going to do is we're going to go with the angle grinder, which is always fun to use, and the little corner vise, and we'll get that set up. But I want to, you know, when we do this, we're going to start off with a coarse grit to try and get rid of some. Remember, see, this is all banged over on the edge. So we're going to try and straighten up this edge and get it just decent. And I want to show you how shellac works as a preservative for this kind of
Now,
tool.
first we'll start off with the grinding disc here, this disc here, because you can see we're going to have to reprofile this area to try and get the, you know, this lip off here, and it's probably hardened from being banged down. So, you know, we'll use that. We have it mounted in this beautiful corner vise that I can adjust this all different ways, you know, to make it easier to work with, and then we'll work our way down.
Okay, you see now we just took off that lip, that bad lip that was up there. And you can see it looks kind of choppy, but that's because you're dealing with that grinding disc. Now we're going to put on the flap disc, the sanded disc, and then we'll do the rest of the bar down. That's the only place we had to really use that grinder disc on. Here we are, a little over an hour of grinding down, and you can see we got a top, you know, where the profile is correct now, but you can see you still got all them grinding marks from the 60 grit disc that we were using. And now we got to take this down with a like a 120 grit disc, and we'll do the same exact thing and get rid of all these marks and see how it comes out.
We're in the middle of a pretty heavy rainstorm, but you want to see something pretty interesting? I think you'll get a kick out of this. Take a look at this.
See that water dripping there? This is my electrical, this is where my electric comes into the house, in this box. And look at the water is coming through my electrical service. That's where it's coming in. How great is that? That's got to be safe. Okay, we mounted the crowbar back in the vise vertically, and now what we're going to use is 30-year-old polishing compound. DuPont made this, and it's it's the poor man's alternative to Flitz. And we'll see if we can get a little shine out of this.
Now you know my favorite part. Remember what this crowbar looked like before we started.
And we're calling this project done. You know, I had all intentions of shellacking this, but the finish is just so nice and smooth on here, you know. And I put the little red in it, made in USA. And you remember the top here, what it looked like, you know. You remember how it was all mashed over, and now it's back to what looking nice. And, you know, it's not perfect. It's not what you would call mirror finish, but it definitely is just so nice and smooth to feel. And all the lines are back. They're all even, and you know, so you have that hexagon, and it's really a nice crowbar, you know. And this one was really hard because of the steel that they used back then. It was, you know, a lot harder than a lot of other steels, and you know, it just takes that much longer to get down past the rust and the pitting. And it's so funny because there was a lot of pitting here, I guess where your hand goes. So after I compounded, I gave it 2 coats of wax, and we're good to go. Now let me show you what I was going to shellac it, and let me show you what that looks like. One day I was down here a couple weeks ago, and I just grabbed this. It was, you know, this was all brown and patina when I got it, and I just ran it under the fiber wheel, the wire brush, and everything. And you can see it's not done to them. I didn't use any of the belt sand or anything, so that's the original finish. But it's nice. And then I shellacked it. This is 2 coats of shellac over here. So normally you don't put shellac over something that's polished because there's nothing for the shellac to grip on. But this had enough surface character, or, you know, surface imperfections, and, you know, the forging marks and everything for the shellac to really grip in. But so that's it came out nice, right? That's presentable, something that you know. And this is a usable tool. This is not something like, you know, that you would just put away. This is just the way it is. I cleaned it up, and so that's what I had all intentions of doing with the crowbar, but I wound up waxing and polishing it just because it feels
So
better.
thanks very much for tuning in. Hope you have a nice day, and we'll see you again Wednesday.